The big hall was filled with people in shiny clothes and loud voices. It was the annual charity night hosted by Gray Enterprises, and everyone wanted to be close to Vanessa Gray. She was the youngest CEO in the city, and also the most beautiful. Her black dress flowed like water, and her heels clicked softly on the marble floor as she moved from one group to another. She smiled politely, but her eyes were cold like glass. She had seen too many people try to win her attention for money or fame, and she was tired of it. The guests laughed and drank and spoke about business, but all eyes kept drifting toward Vanessa. Every man there wanted to speak to her, yet no one dared get too close except a small group of young businessmen who had been drinking and were trying to act charming. One of them said loudly that he could beat anyone in chess, including the CEO herself. Vanessa turned her head slowly and smiled a slow mocking smile that made everyone nearby fall silent. She walked over to the group and stood with her hands folded in front of her. Her voice was soft, but it carried across the room as she said that no man there could win against her in chess, and if someone did she would marry him. The words hung in the air like a spark in a dark room. People gasped and whispered. Some laughed thinking she was joking. Vanessa tilted her chin and smirked. She was not a woman who believed in love or marriage. To her it was just a game, a challenge she could throw to amuse herself and humiliate anyone foolish enough to try. No one moved toward the chessboard in the corner of the room. It was part of the charity auction display, but now it became the center of attention. The men who had been bragging looked down at their drinks. They did not dare risk losing in front of the most powerful woman in the city. Then a voice came from the back of the hall. It was calm and steady, but strong enough to be heard over the murmurs. I will play. Heads turned as a tall man stepped forward from the shadows. He was not wearing a suit like the others, just a clean white shirt with rolled sleeves and worn black trousers. His hair was slightly messy and his face looked tired, but his eyes were sharp like he could see straight through anyone. Vanessa looked him up and down. You think you can beat me? She asked with a hint of laughter in her voice. The man nodded once. I can. The crowd shifted so he could walk toward the chessboard. Some people whispered, asking who he was. No one seemed to know. He did not wear a name tag. He did not act nervous. Vanessa followed him slowly, her heels clicking louder now in the quiet hall. When they reached the table, she sat on one side and gestured for him to sit opposite. What is your name? She asked. Liam, he replied. Just Liam? She asked. Just Liam, he said. The game pieces were already arranged neatly on the board. Vanessa placed her hands lightly on the table and leaned forward. Let us make this interesting, she said. If you win, I will keep my promise and marry you. If you lose, you will work for my company without pay for 6 months. The crowd murmured again. Some thought she was too harsh. Others thought the man was foolish for agreeing. Liam did not even blink. All right, he said. His voice was steady and quiet, but there was something in it that made people lean closer. Vanessa's lips curled into another smirk. She had seen overconfident men before, and she enjoyed breaking them. As they prepared to play, a woman in the crowd whispered that the man looked familiar. Another whispered that he must be desperate for money or attention. But no one could explain the calm way he moved his hands over the chess pieces without touching them yet. Like he was already seeing the whole game in his mind. Vanessa picked up a white pawn and made the first move with grace. The match had begun. The hall was so silent that people could hear the faint click of each piece on the board. Every eye was on the game. Every breath was held. Liam studied the board for only a moment before moving. His fingers were steady. His eyes never left the pieces. Vanessa tried to read his face, but it was like a wall. No sign of doubt. No sign of fear. In that moment, some people began to wonder if this man was not just a random guest. There was something about him. Something in the way he sat straight and focused, as if nothing else existed but the board in front of him. Vanessa felt a flicker of something she had not felt in years. Not fear, exactly, but awareness. Like maybe this game was not going to be as easy as she thought. The crowd leaned in closer. They did not know that this single game of chess was about to change everything for both of them forever. The room was still quiet as the game continued. But something had changed. People were not just curious anymore. They were watching with wide eyes and holding their breath. Because Liam was not playing like a beginner or a man just taking a chance. He was playing like someone who had been here before. Someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Vanessa made her moves quickly and with style. She was confident. She had beaten lawyers, bankers, even chess club champions at company events before. She always won. But tonight her fingers moved just a little slower after each turn. She kept glancing up at Liam. His face was calm, without emotion. His moves were simple but sharp. There was no hesitation. In the back of the room, a man whispered that he had seen Liam somewhere before. Another said maybe he was a chess teacher or a professional hiding his skills. But no one knew for sure. Vanessa leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. She was starting to feel something she did not like. Pressure. Liam was not smiling. He was not trying to be clever. He did not even seem to care about the challenge. He was just focused. Focused like someone who had waited years for this one moment. Far away, in a quiet part of the city, there was a small apartment with a broken window and a flickering light. Inside was a little girl sitting at a table drawing with crayons. Her name was Emily, and she was 7 years old. She was kind, smart, and full of questions. But tonight she sat in silence because her dad was not home yet. She looked at the empty chair across from her and whispered, "Please come back soon, Daddy." Emily was Liam's daughter. Her mother had died in a hospital fire 3 years ago. The hospital was run by a private company. That company was once owned by Vanessa's late father, and now it was part of Gray Enterprises. Liam had tried everything to get answers. He wrote letters, called lawyers, begged reporters. But no one listened. He lost his wife and almost lost Emily too. Since that day, Liam had stopped playing chess, stopped laughing, stopped living like he used to. All he cared about was protecting Emily and finding the truth. 1 month ago, he found a name hidden in an old file. Vanessa Gray, the new CEO. The woman who controlled the very company that had erased the reports from the fire. She had no idea what her company had done. Or maybe she did. Either way, Liam knew what he had to do. He learned about the charity event from a flyer in a coffee shop. He borrowed a suit, but tore it on the way, so he wore his old shirt instead. He walked into the hall, with no invitation and no plan. But when he saw the chessboard, and then heard Vanessa's words, "Beat me, and I'll marry you," he knew the universe had just opened a door. Now here he was, sitting across from the woman who unknowingly held the answers he had searched for all these years. But Liam did not want revenge. He did not want fame or money. He wanted the truth. And this strange game, this moment, might just be the key. Back at the board, Vanessa made another move. She leaned forward and said softly, "You're very quiet, Liam. Most men talk during a game. Are you shy or just serious?" Liam looked up and his eyes were deep and unreadable. "I don't play for fun," he said. "I play when I must." Her fingers froze for a second. That answer was not what she expected. She tilted her head, trying to figure him out. But she couldn't. No one could. The crowd had grown larger now. Some were recording with their phones. Others were betting quietly on who would win. But Liam didn't seem to notice. He moved his piece quickly and leaned back. Vanessa stared at the board and her breath caught. He was setting a trap, and she saw it too late. In the hallway outside, 2 security guards looked at a list of guests and realized Liam's name was not there. They began walking toward the hall. But before they could reach the door, the crowd gasped. Vanessa's queen was gone. Taken in a simple move. Clean. Precise. Deadly. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Liam sat with his hands on his lap, waiting. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't proud. He looked almost sad. Vanessa looked into his eyes again. For the first time, she felt something strange. Not anger, not fear, but curiosity. "Who are you?" she whispered. But Liam didn't answer. He looked past her at the window, where the moonlight was pouring in. And for a second his mind was back home. With Emily. With the sound of crayons on paper. With the memory of a voice he would never hear again. This was not just a game. It was a door. And once it opened, nothing would ever be the same again. The room felt frozen, like time had stopped and no one dared move or speak. Vanessa looked down at the board again, trying to understand what just happened. Her queen was gone, and Liam had taken it like it was nothing. No tricks, no fancy traps, just 3 clean moves, and suddenly she was standing on the edge of defeat. Somewhere in the crowd a man whispered that this had to be a joke. No one beats Vanessa in chess. Not in front of everyone. Not with just a few moves. And not someone like him. Liam sat still. His face calm like water. He was not smiling or showing pride. He just waited, quiet and patient, like he had already seen how the story would end. Vanessa tried to recover. She reached for a piece and paused. Then changed her mind. Then picked another. But no matter where she looked, the path was blocked. The board was a puzzle now. And every answer led to failure. She made her move. It was weak, but it was all she had. The crowd leaned in again. Phones were recording. People were whispering. Some were even laughing softly in disbelief. The mighty CEO, the woman who controlled billions, was now in danger of losing to a man with no name and no past. Liam made his next move. It was fast, simple, deadly. Vanessa's king was trapped. She saw it now. There was no way out. And still he had not said a word. He just looked at her with eyes that carried more pain than pride. Eyes that had seen something deeper than winning or losing. Vanessa looked up, and her voice was barely a whisper. "Did you come here just to beat me?" Liam blinked slowly and answered, "No, I came for something bigger." She wanted to ask more, but her throat felt tight. She looked back at the board and saw it clearly. There was nothing left to do. She moved her hand toward her king and pushed it gently onto its side. The signal of defeat. The room erupted into gasps and shocked voices. Some people clapped, unsure what else to do. Others stood in silence. But all eyes stayed on the 2 people at the table. Liam stood slowly and looked down at Vanessa. "You said, if I won, you would marry me." He did not say it as a joke. He did not say it to tease her. He said it like he meant it. Like those words mattered more than anyone knew. Vanessa stood too. Her hands were shaking slightly. She tried to speak, but the words would not come. She had made the challenge, thinking no one would ever win. She had said it with a smile and a cold heart. But now here was a man, a stranger, who had done the impossible. And he was not laughing. Liam turned to walk away, but a security guard stepped in front of him. "Sir, do you have an invitation?" he asked firmly. Liam looked at the man and then at Vanessa. She raised one hand and the guard stepped aside. "Let him go," she said quietly. Liam walked out of a hall and into the night air. The wind was cool and soft on his face. He took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. Far away the lights of the city blinked like stars. But all he could think about was getting back to Emily. She would be asleep by now. Maybe she had waited for him. Maybe she had drawn something for him like she always did. He walked with long steps, his mind racing. He had not come for a game or a marriage. He had come for truth. And now, maybe, just maybe, he was close. Back inside the hall, Vanessa sat alone at the chessboard. Everyone else had gone back to their drinks and their laughs. But she stayed, staring at the board, at the path of 3 moves that changed everything. She could not stop thinking about his face. The sadness in his eyes. The calm. The silence. Who was he really? Why did he play like someone who had lost everything? And why did he leave without asking for anything? For the first time in her life, Vanessa felt unsure. She had always been in control, always 5 steps ahead. But now, she had lost. Not just a game, but something deeper. She looked around the room. Suddenly the lights felt too bright, the music too loud, the voices too fake. She stood up and walked toward the back exit. No one noticed. No one stopped her. She stepped outside into the quiet night and looked down the street. Liam was gone. But something inside her told her this was not the end. Something told her this was just the beginning. Vanessa sat in her car with the engine running, but she did not drive. She kept staring at her own hands resting on the steering wheel. They were shaking, and she could not explain why. She had faced investors' lawsuits and boardroom battles without fear. But tonight something felt different. She kept seeing Liam's face in her mind. Not because of the game, not because of the marriage challenge, but because of the look in his eyes. That deep, quiet sadness that said more than words ever could. Back at the office, she sat alone in the dark. She opened her laptop and typed his name, Liam. But there were too many Liams and none of them matched. No last name, no background, no records. She called her assistant and asked for the guest list from the charity event. His name was not on it, not registered, not invited. He had walked in from nowhere and walked out just the same. The next day, she walked into the boardroom, and everyone stood to greet her as usual. But something was different. The way they looked at her, the way they spoke. There was whispering. There were questions. She had lost. And to someone no one knew. The news was already spreading. Social media clips. Headlines. CEO checkmated by mystery man in front of hundreds. But Vanessa did not care about that. She kept thinking about what Liam had said. I came for something bigger. What did he mean? What was behind those words? And why did he take the challenge so seriously? She sat in her office and looked out the window. Below her was a city full of noise and life. Somewhere in that city he was walking, maybe working, maybe alone. She sent someone from her security team to check every camera around the event building. They followed the footage and tracked him walking down the street. He stopped by a flower shop, then turned into a narrow road and disappeared. No car, no phone, no trace. Later that night, she went home, but she could not sleep. She opened her old notebooks, the ones her father left before he died. Inside were records from the past, business deals, hospital reports, property transfers. One name kept showing up. The same hospital again and again. The one that burned 3 years ago. The one her father once funded, but then quietly pulled out of. She dug deeper, found news articles, legal documents, photos of the fire, and then a picture of a woman with long brown hair. A nurse. She had died in the fire while saving patients. Her name was Sarah. Next to her name, survived by husband Liam and daughter Emily. Vanessa felt something heavy press on her chest. She stared at the photo of the woman. She looked kind, brave, young. She whispered the name again, Liam. Suddenly, it all made sense. He had not come to play a game. He had come because of pain, because of loss, because her company, her name, was part of his story. She sat alone on her couch, holding the photo in her hand. She felt something strange, something she had not felt in years, guilt. The next morning, she called her assistant and asked to visit the burned hospital site. They drove out of the city to a quiet place. The building was still standing, but broken and empty. The smell of ash was gone, but the sadness remained. Vanessa walked through the halls with slow steps. She saw old toys, broken chairs, charred walls, and, in one corner, a small picture frame covered in dust. She picked it up. Inside was a drawing of a family, a man, a woman, and a little girl holding hands. Vanessa felt tears in her eyes and quickly wiped them away. She was not used to crying. She was not used to feeling anything at all. She drove back to the city and sat in her office again. But she could not focus. She kept thinking about Liam, about Emily, about what they had lost, and about what she could do. That night she went online and made a donation to a small clinic named after Sarah. Then she started making calls to lawyers, to reporters, to city council. She wanted every record of the fire opened. She wanted the truth to come out, even if it made her company look bad. For once, she did not care about winning. Then she sat at her kitchen table with the chessboard in front of her. She set up the pieces just like that night. 3 moves. That was all it took. She whispered softly, "I never should have joked about marriage. And now, I don't even know if you'll ever speak to me again." She looked out the window, the city lights glowing softly. And far away, in a small apartment, a little girl named Emily was drawing another picture. This one showed a woman standing next to her dad. They were all smiling. And in the corner, a little heart with a question mark inside it. The news spread faster than anyone expected. Vanessa Gray, the famous CEO, was getting married to the mystery man from the chess game. People called it a publicity stunt. Some said it was romantic. Others said it was madness. But Vanessa said nothing to the press. She ignored the headlines and the questions. She kept her eyes on one thing: Liam. He was hard to find, but not impossible. She sent him a letter, not through email or lawyers. Just a simple envelope with one sentence written by hand. "You won the game. Let's finish the story." 3 days later, he stood outside her office, wearing the same white shirt and calm expression. He looked her in the eyes and said, "Are you sure?" She nodded slowly. "Yes." They signed the papers quietly, with no rings, no flowers, no guests. It was legal, but not loud. It was simple but strange. Even Vanessa's assistant looked confused. The next day, they moved into a quiet house on the edge of the city. It had a small garden and a creaky floor. Vanessa wore jeans for the first time in years. Liam fixed the broken sink. And little Emily. She smiled. Emily was shy at first, but she watched Vanessa closely. She drew pictures of her every day. Vanessa kept them on the fridge with magnets shaped like stars. They had dinner at the table together. They watered plants. They watched cartoons. It was not love, not yet. But it was something new, something real. Vanessa began reading bedtime stories to Emily. She had never read to a child before. Her voice was stiff at first, but Emily giggled and held her hand. And something in Vanessa's heart began to melt. But Liam, he was quiet. Sometimes he would sit by the window and stare outside for hours. Vanessa saw him once with tears in his eyes. She wanted to ask, but she waited. One night, while Liam was out buying groceries, Vanessa wandered into his study. She was looking for a charger, but found a notebook instead. She opened it gently. Inside were pages filled with writing. Some were letters. Some were plans. Some were drawings of fire. She saw a photo of Sarah, young and smiling in a nurse's uniform. Next to it, a small picture of the hospital with a date circled in red. Vanessa's hands began to shake. She flipped through the pages. There were copies of emails, reports, old bills, and at the very back, a list of names. Her father's name was at the top. She dropped the book on the floor and stepped back. Her heart was beating fast. She felt cold. Everything was clear now. Liam did not marry her for love. He married her for justice, for truth, for his daughter, and for Sarah. She sat down slowly on the couch and stared at the wall, her mind full of questions. Was he using her? Was any of this real? Did he ever care? When Liam returned, he found her sitting in the dark. He turned on the light and saw the notebook on the floor. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "You read it?" he said softly. Vanessa did not speak at first. Then she whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" Liam walked over and sat across from her. "Because I needed you to see it on your own. You could have destroyed me," she said. "You still can." He shook his head. "That was never my goal. I just wanted to know the truth. And I wanted Emily to know that her mom did not die for nothing." Vanessa felt tears rising, but she held them back. She stood up and walked to the window. "I don't know what this marriage is anymore," she said. "I don't know what I am to you." Liam walked up behind her and spoke gently. "At first you were just a door I had to open. But then you became something else. I saw the way you looked at Emily. I saw the way you changed. I didn't expect that. And now, I don't know either. She turned around, her eyes full of pain. So, what do we do now? Liam looked at her. We tell the truth. That night they stayed in separate rooms. Emily asked why, and no one answered. She hugged her stuffed bear and looked at the stars outside her window. Vanessa could not sleep. She kept thinking of Sarah, of the fire, of her own father's name in that notebook. She felt like the walls were closing in. But she also felt something else. A strange kind of hope. Like maybe, just maybe, this story was not over yet. The next morning the sky was soft and gray. Rain tapped gently on the windows, and the world outside looked quiet and calm. Inside the small house, Liam sat at the table with a cup of coffee in his hands. He stared at the steam rising slowly and said nothing. Vanessa walked in wearing her usual black coat, but today her eyes looked tired. She sat across from him and placed something on the table. It was a small wooden chessboard, the same one from the charity night. Let's play one more game, she said softly. Liam raised his eyes and nodded once. He reached out and helped her set up the pieces. Each click of the wood against the board felt like a heartbeat, like something old was being rebuilt. They played in silence at first, just the sounds of the rain and the chess pieces between them. Emily peeked from the hallway, holding her bear. She did not say a word, but her eyes were bright with hope. After a few moves, Vanessa looked up. I went to the hospital site. I saw everything. I'm sorry for what my company did. Even if I didn't know it then. I know it now, and I'm going to fix it. Liam nodded, but did not stop playing. He moved a piece and looked at her. Why now? Because I met you, she said. And because I met Emily. You both changed me. I never cared about anyone before. But now I do. Liam leaned back and looked at her fully for the first time. You were never the enemy, Vanessa. But I needed someone to hear me. And somehow, you did. They played a few more moves. Then Liam looked at the board and smiled softly. You just beat me, he said. Vanessa blinked. What? Liam pointed at the board. Checkmate. Vanessa stared in shock, then laughed quietly. You let me win. Maybe I did. Maybe you earned it. Emily ran over and climbed into Liam's lap. She looked at Vanessa and said, Are we a real family now? Vanessa reached across the table and held Liam's hand. Yes, sweetie. We are. Later that day, Vanessa held a press conference. The media was waiting for another surprise. And they got one. She stood at the podium. No makeup. No designer dress. Just a woman with truth in her voice. She spoke about the hospital, about the fire, about her father's choices, and about the man who walked into her life with a quiet voice and a broken heart. She told the world she was going to reopen the case, pay the victims, fix the records, and start again. This company was built on silence, she said. But from now on it will speak. People were shocked. Some were angry. But most were moved. In the crowd, Liam stood holding Emily's hand. He did not smile, but his eyes were full of peace. That evening they went back to the little house. They made pancake for dinner and laughed when Emily spilled syrup on the floor. Vanessa helped her draw a new picture. This time it was a big house with flowers and 3 people holding hands in the garden. Liam sat outside under the stars. Vanessa joined him with a blanket and sat close. She looked at the sky and whispered, I never thought I could love anyone. But here you are. He looked at her. You don't need to be perfect, Vanessa. You just need to be real. She rested her head on his shoulder. And for the first time, there were no walls, no lies, no games, just 2 people, 2 stories, 1 future, and a little girl who believed in happy endings. The chessboard stayed on the shelf in the living room. Sometimes they played. Sometimes they just sat and talked. But they always remembered the night it all began. The night a challenge turned into a choice. And that choice turned into love. Because sometimes, one move is all it takes to change everything.